It's the last day of the HGC weekend. We've already had fantastic series from around the world, and now we're ready for more in North America. I'm Gillyweed here as always with Dreadnought. Dread, we get to see Tempo Storm after their heartbreaking loss versus Gale Force Esports on Friday. You think they've recovered?
I want to think so. You know, they've been such a consistent team within the North American scene. They have been at the top for so very long that I feel like that kind of stuff can't get to them. Plus, they managed to make it all the way to game number 5, and it was still like kind of anybody's series. So I expect Tempo to be able to recover here today.
They'll be playing up against No tomorrow, but before we get to that, we have some business to attend to. Let's start with the standings, because speaking of Gale Force Esports, there's a new sheriff in town at North America, and that is Gale Force Esports. With a 3-0 record so far, 2 of those victories up over Roll20 and, of course, Tempo Storm. But also we're looking at No tomorrow, fresh off the blocks with a 2-0 victory so far. They'll go up against Tempo Storm today, so we'll see if they can hold that undefeated record. But the big news, once again, Team Naventic Dread off to a slow start, even with their roster changes.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's kind of, the pattern has finally broken. That maybe that it is no longer when they get the roster swaps that they have that kind of honeymoon phase where Naventic looks like a near unstoppable team. This time, not the case, and so it's going to be just whether or not they can find it within themselves to get that improvement, especially for players like Tomster learning that new role, trying to grow as a group, but it does seem like it's going to only continue for the rest of at least Phase 2.
Well, looking at the rest of today in Phase 2, we're going to check out the schedule. In Europe, we started with Fnatic versus Tricked Esport. Fnatic continues on their tear, getting a 3-0 victory there. Very dominant fashion, once again, for Fnatic. But man, the last series, Team Expert finally did it! They were able to take out Team Dignitas. Very, very close series, of course, as you can see with a 3-2 there. We will close things out with a grudge match between Roll20 and Superstars, ex-teammates on either side, but we start with Tempo Storm versus No tomorrow Dread. Huge congrats to Team Expert being able to beat Team Dignitas today.
Yeah, they've been waiting to make that happen. We always talk about the big 3 of Europe, and it's always been, you know, Experts have been fighting as like, hey, can we call it the big 4? But that's now kind of the first step to make it like Expert is finally a part of that bracket to consider at the top of the European scene with that win over Dig. So yeah, huge congratulations, especially for players like ADRD, been in the scene for since the beginning of the game, competitive heroes, and finally finding his way towards the top of the ranks is really nice to see.
It does make the top 3 a little more convoluted when we start looking at the Western Clash for Europe, so I'm excited to see how that region unfolds. But I'm also excited for No tomorrow versus Tempo Storm. No tomorrow coming in with Equinox now, a different shot caller. Casanova moving over to the Warrior role. You can see the potential for there, but there's also some room for improvement.
Yeah, I do kind of fear the pressure that is going to be on to Casanova in this series with a team as coordinated as Tempo Storm, and it just is going to be the pressure that he was talking about, how easy it is for those frontliners to get caught out too far. I want to see how is Casanova going to perform under the pressure that Tempo's going to apply.
Well, let's hear from the players themselves, Tempo Storm and No tomorrow.
After last week, we're just continuing to work hard, putting in the hours. We know Tempo's a strong team, but really we just see them as the next step in reaching global competition. I think the major strength of Tempo is actually their macro game, so really we're just going to want to capitalize on team fighting, as that is our team's strength anyway. I think the biggest improvement we've made as a team due to the roster change is our overall macro game and decisiveness. We're now much more quick to make a decision and act on it than we were before.
I personally have a special a relationship with that team in general because you know, Tiger JK, I used to be on a team with him. He's the one who kind of brought me to the scene. Because I know them personally, I really want to do well versus that team, because you know, when you have a friend who's competing, you want to like beat them and show your friend that you're improving. They had a really good showing on the past games. They are, I believe, 2-0 right now. I feel like they are better than before, so we're not gonna underestimate them just because they were last place last season. So we're not gonna underestimate them. We're just gonna prep just as hard as GFE, show them that Tempo is #1 still.
We got to hear a little bit there from June, as well as Casanova, the new Warrior player for No Tomorrow. For me, No Tomorrow, the one thing that stood out to me in their first 2 series was their decisiveness when it came to core calls. 2 games in a row versus Superstars, one of which they were behind. They made quick, decisive calls of when they could go to core. It wasn't like we've wiped them, we for sure can be able to take this, but they knew exactly when they could go. And to see that from a new roster, especially one with who is following a new shot color. Granted, it's a shot color with a lot of experience in Equinox, but that was still great to see. What have you been able to see from No Tomorrow that's really stood out to you in Phase 2?
I think the biggest outlier in phase number 2 has kind of been Talking Trees. He's this subtle carry for the team. Like he's making a lot of plays, but they aren't overly flashy. So you don't go, oh man, I just threw my tablet. Talking Trees.
He really loves Talking Trees.
Yeah, Talking Trees though, like he is making these plays, but it isn't apparent until you take a second glance and look at like what is he doing for his team in these type of team fights. And I just feel like he needs to be given a lot more credit for what he's doing in this squad. Again, with the youth that they have and also those adjustments, he is a nice constant that they're going to need to keep climbing upward.
Well, Talking Trees, as well as every single member of No Tomorrow, will have to be on their toes for this match versus Tempo Storm. Let's get started with the first draft. We start with the Battleground pool for HGC. We're going to Cursed Hollow. Picked by Tempo Storm, it is becoming more of a Tempo Storm pick. However, it has also been picked recently by No Tomorrow. So a nice, even battleground for both sides to kick things off.
Yeah, the Sky Temple removal and the Infernal Shrines, though, that's it's not necessarily that insane, but the Sky Temple one I find interesting here for No Tomorrow. Trying to look back at their general trends when it comes to the bans, I guess they stick to it. They have 3 times in a row now just banned out the Sky.
I'm trying to think of maybe a reason why,
yeah.
And I don't really have anything off the top of my head. Must just be throughout their scrims, where they've gotten to now, they just don't feel like they're as comfortable with it. They don't want to play it for whatever reason.
Yeah, that's just both of these teams have their one map they never want to deal with. And again, I just note that because it does feel like North America has now kind of put more concerted effort towards removing things like Dragon or that Braxis holdout, but neither of those are going to be removed in this series.
Sky is definitely a standout. Tempo Storm's been banning Infernal Shrines for a long time.
Yeah, they've kind of been over it and just not wanting to risk it for any team whatsoever. But No Tomorrow here, they're going to start with the removal of the Anubarak. I expect Tempo Storm to ban out the Abathur here in the secondary slot. It's something that a lot of teams have been removing on a map like Cursed in North America specifically, but they hover the Genji.
Yeah, No Tomorrow has been playing a fair amount of Genji, specifically Talking Trees, like you mentioned, and doing a good job with him too. So if that is a fear, if Tempo Storm don't feel like they can get him or don't necessarily want to prioritize him as much, if they want a global themselves, they may feel like they have more options than No Tomorrow, with No Tomorrow wanting to focus heavily into that Genji.
Yeah, Tempo Storm, the 2 times we've seen them in phase number 2 play Cursed Hollow, Abathur hasn't made it through the ban phase. And so the fact that, again, the Genji hover, I was surprised that they would even consider that, but they reserve back to their norm. Genji snap lock here for No Tomorrow.
Yes.
That's going to be Talking Trees there. Guy to be watching out for. The Dahaka response, concentrating onto the macro with the ban onto the Anubarak and onto the Abathur. Removes a warrior, removes a global. Conveniently, Dahaka fulfills both of those roles.
And with those 2 fast picks, Tempo Storm understood that by leaving up Genji, No Tomorrow we're going to be quick to get him. He has a lot of mobility to be able to make the right rotations, and obviously he's just a monster in team fights. But it does enable Tempo Storm to get 2 picks that are important to them. Dahaka and Uther. With the change-up in the Warriors that we've seen between Caterpillar and Fury, there is some ramp-up time for Fury, where they're still trying to figure out, where he's going to be most impactful. And it does seem like between Arthas and Dahaka, those are the 2 favorites for Fury to be on as a secondary warrior. So they lock that in. They get June his Uther too. Now where does No Tomorrow go with their Genji? We're still waiting on an Equinox hero, but likely that'll be after the fold.
The Malfurion has been something that has been more prominent for No Tomorrow than every other team in North America.
Definitely, but they haven't played since the nerf.
Yeah, since the adjustments to it, but we saw them prioritize it more than every other team, which is why I wanted to highlight here. Do we see them stick to that, even on a map where you don't necessarily expect that kind of priority? So we see No Tomorrow has made adjustments that they are not going to value Malfurion as highly as before, and instead transferring over to a Stitch's Falstad style of play.
So a definite isolation there. They've got a hook, Gorge potentially too with the Gust, but I think if it's not banned or taken away from them, they may still go for Malfurion after the fact so that they do have the roots pairing with Stitches.
Yeah, with the new adjustment, we talked about it yesterday, the level 7 makes that style of play even more lethal, you know. Not necessarily into Uther, because Uther gains value through armor, which is not the same as reducing the healing, but it is still a huge tool to have. Malthael is going to be banned out, it looks like, here for Tempo Storm.
It's kind of like, which Equinox hero do you not want to deal with, really?
Yeah, it's also so good there with the any resets. You know, we talk about how these poison dot focus heroes have been enabling those reset style of play so very well. With Genji in the hands of No Tomorrow, Tempo Storm is going to remove, what is he? What is his official surname?
The aspect of death.
I was going to say the leader of death, the reaper of death. I didn't have the aspect of death.
The aspect. Yeah, I thought it was Angel in Death too, but then there was a whole shebang. Actually, I think I got a lot of tweets about it explaining the aspect versus Angel reference. But he does have a talent called Angel in Death, Angel of Death at least.
At least he's got that going for him, you know.
It's somewhere. He also has a talent called Reaper of Souls, so he's got some pretty cool talent names.
That Arth is banned.
I don't. Yeah, I guess. That makes sense because they've already taken out Anub and Arthas now as well. So they're taking away some of the favorite warriors of Tempo, but I'm not sure if Tempo would have paired Cattle on Arthas with Dahaka. Fury playing Dahaka yet. The
one thing that it seems strange to me is, though Tempo may not move in this direction, what that ban kind of opens up is actually an opportunity to move into a double global with the Illidan Dahaka play. It removes one of those matchup counterparts that, Tomorrow, it doesn't look like they're going to commit to. They could, but it's less likely into their draft. It's just one of those things where you gave Tempo Storm an opportunity to heavily shift their draft into a totally different playstyle, to where it might be very difficult to be able to recover. And though I don't think Tempo is a team that makes that kind of adjustment right in the middle of a draft, it is an opportunity.
I wonder if that's even a bait to that. There's the Tassadar.
It's screaming Illidan.
Tyrael, yes, it does. So Tyrael picks for Tempo Storm, potentially an Illidan at the end there. Is there any way that No Tomorrow wanted to bait Tempo into an Illidan? Because it's obvious that Tempo has played Illidan a lot, especially on this battleground.
I think it's definitely possible. I can also see the thought process on the side of No Tomorrow, essentially claiming that with the Dahaka, you traditionally want a full solo warrior, and most solo warriors do not want the Illidan, a Dahaka, and a solo warrior. It just, you lack a little bit of damage. You need to be very effective with those initiations and the crowd control. So essentially arguing that, if you incentivize into it, it's just not a bad comp, but it's definitely not as scary. I am afraid of it because of the double global, though. That is where, when you can manipulate a map like Curse, you can suddenly just dictate every rotation that we see out of No Tomorrow.
Vola.
Man. I did not think that would be another backliner here.
No, considering that Equinox is on this team.
It's got to be something crazy.
Yeah, it's going to be obviously a support of some kind. Just which one? Ariel to go with Vola.
Wow, this is going to be extremely difficult for No Tomorrow in this game. I already feel... No, even if this isn't an Illidan, because now you can still go into like a Tracer or something very dive heavy. Tracer's obviously way worse than the Illidan in this dynamic, but you can move with the Judgment and single target somebody. They're going to go with it. The reason why I argued the Illidan is worse is just because it's a little bit, or excuse me, the Tracer's worse. It's a little bit more high execution, but into a triple backline and a cleanseless support, you can force a free Aegis so very fast. Again, another reason why the Tracer is a little bit less incentivized is just because when you commit it with the Tyrael and the Tassadar, suddenly you're like, oh, if we don't win through this initial burst opening, we really kind of drop off in the team fight. Whereas if you fail with the Illidan, you really can still continue to win that fight as long as they didn't get a perfect counter initiation. But Tempo takes the higher risk composition and still looks grim for No Tomorrow.
Yeah, it's a fantastic composition. What I'm looking at, too, is Tempo has a lot of heroes that are self-sufficient. There's a lot of mobility on that side. They have Tassadar and a lot of heroes that pair well with Tassadar. Specifically, Tracer pairs very well with Tassadar, and then he can kind of do his own thing. Same with Tyrael. But then when you look at No Tomorrow's composition, Genji, he can be pretty self-sufficient between his mobility and his deflect.
Yeah.
But then Falstad and Vola, Falstad has to play very well. Jason's got to be doing very well with his own thing. Stitches can't get too far caught out, you know, when you talk about force walls too, because it's all dependent on the Ariel, and if Vala can continue to do the damage necessary for Ariel to be able to keep them all healthy. But it looks more like an isolation comp to me.
I mean, it is. It is. It's just going to be insanely difficult to make it work, because when you have an isolation comp, even when you have Stitcher traditionally, you don't want to be initiated on. And then when you have a pick comp, you definitely don't want to be the one initiated on. Tyrael is one of the easiest forces of a fight that you can essentially have. And then also Ariel's one of the supports who wants to start a fight in a very niche and specific way, which is why that transfer over to the Tracer is such a clever move on the side of Tempo Storm. But I feel like No Tomorrow, again, with that Arthas ban, should have been aware that the Tracer transition was very easy to be made on the side of Tempo.
Yeah, it does seem that way. There's a lot of mobility to get away from hooks, and to deal with Gorge, there's force walls. There's even a possibility of judgment too. So we'll see how this is going to work out for No tomorrow. We're going into game number 1 of this best of 5 series.
Tempo Storm here is going to be off in the blue with their so very aggressive composition, looking to dive it away. But there to heal everyone up is going to be June on the Uther. Fury is going to be playing the Dahaka. Cawthon Luck on Tassadar. Tracer's going to be played by Psalm, and Caterpillar now on that main warrior. He's got the Tyrael.
Their opponents looking for the upset here are No Tomorrow, with Tiger JK playing Ariel, Jason playing his Falstad, Casanova switching over to the warrior role on Stitches, Equinox playing the Vala, and finally, Left Talking Trees playing Genji.
Talking Trees on the Genji. I talked about it before. A player who is slowly just, you know, he seems to be really a lot of the reason of the success and the growth here of this group of players. He's got a lot of pressure on his shoulders this game, though. I mean, with this composition being so extremely burden heavy when it comes to how they approach these fights, they need to be near flawless, and Talking Trees is no exception to that on the Genji, because if he gets those resets and really maximizes the value of his heroes, he may be able to redeem the disadvantaged team fight they may have.
He's gonna brush talk to the top lane now, seeing where the Ariel Vala combination is in effect. And look at the setup here. Psalm's gonna come in, sees the Equinox, to tame the strike, throws her away, but of course Psalm, with a lot of blink charges, goes back in for some damage. Will be healed up by Tiger JK, just trading out.
We do see the level 1 for Vala coming out there on Equinox. He's focusing into the Q build. The reasoning you move into Q build on any map other than Battlefield of Eternity is solely for your single target damage or for your self-survivability, getting into 1 versus 1s with heroes like Tracer. Suddenly, what is I am just flat dead, I can't outrun her, you at least buy a little bit of time, allow your support to be able to make it over to you and hopefully heal you up. So that is why we see Equinox transitioning into that type of build. But again, it's not necessarily it's not the highest damage output. It's again only single target. So they either have to burst that onto a Tracer or it's got to kill the Tyrael Dahaka up front.
Yeah, my question and wondering how it's going to work out specifically with the Ariel when we know that the primary battery of Ariel will be Vala. Sometimes we also see this build in Korea looking at Curse Hollow specifically so that you have the high damage output for Merking too. Vala can function more as the Merking hero. So we'll see if that is the case. So far she hasn't headed up. It's actually just Tiger JK hanging out there, but Vala will be following as Genji gets to the lane. How do you think that's going to work out with Ariel?
I am afraid of it, you know, because it's just basic math here. Talking about it is really just, we know that Vala's damage input is going to increase the healing output of the Ariel, and when you throw out a frost shot and it hits 4 people, but it's not with the increased bonus damage coming out of the nades, the scaling with the hatred increase that you see at other talent tiers early on. It's just what was a Q build single target burst is going to help one level of a hope bar for Ariel, and then past that she's essentially just a far less effective until another vault rotation comes up or another Q, which is a lot longer again than that W there.
A little bit of change up for Talking Trees build too. We'll talk, or not Talking Trees. Equinox gets hit by the pulse bomb. Tiger JK's there, but it's not enough. Vala gets taken out. First blood for Tempo Storm.
Yeah, the aggression we talked about before, it's not done. Jason getting stunned out there by June. Trees going in to get a little bit of a distraction, but Psalm just wailing away onto Tiger JK. He's got the hope in. No kill's going to be gained.
Everybody really low for No Tomorrow right now, trying to stall this out. Talking Trees has a shuriken. and will throw out the damage to Caterpillar, but not confident enough to be able to go in or worried about where the positioning was for Tempo Storm. Didn't want to add more fuel to the flames for No Tomorrow, trying to get caught back up. But yeah, what I mentioned for Tiger JK was that he has a different level 4 talent, repeated offense. So he is also going to be building more of a damage style. Doesn't give you the majestic span, the increased range, and along with having the swift sweep of a faster cast time of your Sacred Sweep, but still adding some damage there. And there are a lot of walls, especially around the tributes, where he can build those stacks up.
Another thing to consider with the adjustment of the Volo build into this game and the impact it has with Ariel is not only just the hitting multiple targets, but it's actually just Vola's damage is now very focused on specific spells being hit, and they're a lot harder to hit than just throwing out your W.
Definitely.
You know, the AoE there. Like in that last skirmish, we saw Equinox throw out a Q to check a shrub, and though he missed it, and it was totally reasonable to miss that one specifically, it was thrown into fog, and it was essentially a raw Q. But your Vola, or your Ariel, no longer can heal in the later stages of the game if that's missed. And it's just one of those things where it puts, again, a higher skill cap composition on the side of No Tomorrow. But Tempo Storm also, again, committed to more focus into a high impact, high skill cap comp.
Yeah, I was wondering if maybe we'd see Energized Cord for Ariel as a way of her being able to build up her own hope along with that build, but still getting Bursting Light, so wanting to make sure that the cooldown reduction was still there. We have talked on this broadcast specifically about how important it is to have that cooldown reduction. Tempo Storm picks up a second tribute in this game, putting them on Curse Point.
Curse Point experienced sitting so close as well. I mean, No Tomorrow's got a slight edge, but with the minion waves pushing into Tempo, I'm going to call it flat even here at this stage of the game. And that really helps, you know, Tempo Storm, especially because they have such a good team fight. As if this tribute spawns around the 10 mark, I expect them to be not only successful up into the next team fight, but then they're going to have a couple of members dead. They'll have a tribute, a curse follow-up. It's kind of one of those near ideal circumstances that you can find yourself into a curse solo match this early on.
Caterpillar and Selm setting up to have some Giants pushing for the next tribute fight. So too are No Tomorrow, but both sides maintaining that soak. Nobody wants to get behind that crucial talent here once the tribute spawn starts to come out.
I would actually, there's a weird moment here, right here for No Tomorrow, where I would love them to commit everybody down to bottom and just push it out. They aren't going to. But the reason for that is, again, that window I was talking about here for Tempo, but also Tempo, if they get a curse early on, they have no siege. They have to kill you. They absolutely 100% want to force this team fight. So of all the curses to give up, this one I think is by far the best, because then you just group, you match Tempo. When they dive, you stop them from all inning, and then you go, look at Tempo, you didn't get very much onto your curse because these minions are not nearly as strong as they'll be at those later time into the match.
Yeah, perhaps they felt because they were the closer one to 10. Assam gets hit by a hook, but No Tomorrow's Talking Trees is way too low. So Tempo Storm picks that up now. No Tomorrow needs to get out so they don't lose anybody. They have all 5 for the defense.
And so, yeah, this is now the exact window I was talking about. They did show, you know, they didn't commit to maybe getting this fort up on bottom, but No Tomorrow now, they can really stop a lot of the bleeding. The Giants are the biggest concern on top because they are just so darn good on their own. They're amazing whenever you get that curse. And then once this is rid of,
there.
Yeah, I mean, they're doing everything properly. They're just stalling out to the lane where that's going to be most relevant. A hook comes out on top of that. That's a dead Coffin. Another E, doesn't matter, he's out. And that's a nice pick here for No Tomorrow.
Tomorrow get their first kill in this game. Also get the part of the quest there for Shuriken Mastery. That'll help out too. One fort taken down by Tempo Storm, at least sieging, knowing that they were going to lose Kothin in the top lane. But Tahaka continuing to siege here in the bottom. Only losing 1 fort would be pretty nice for No Tomorrow if they're able to make that happen, and that's the worst in this curse.
I love what we saw out of Jason there, constantly starting and stopping, waiting to see, you know, more information on the map before he fully walks away from the experience, because he is now losing experience, but it was safe, making sure he didn't get collapsed on. Boss is going to be started here for Tempo. That's not a surprising play. The members of No Tomorrow should very much understand that this is the transition Tempo made, but they're going to now come down, scout, check it out. Stitches is miles away.
So far away. Yeah, he's far away. It's been spotted.
This is so risky. No Tomorrow can't do this. They're going to try and rely on the Gust.
Oh no, they have Gust, but Jason gets dragged in. They have to use Crystal Aegis. He comes out Gust, but Sanctification on the point. Divine Storm follow-up from June melts Falstad.
Nice alley-oop there coming out from the boss. Dragon, the Stitches. Casanova's got a knee. June falls so low. There's Talking Trees. That's the first reset, but Uther has a bit of healing left. Nice drag for Fury. Again, getting the heals from the passive. But look at Trees. He is just getting so much pressure there, diving on in. And that's now 3 kills for 1. No Tomorrow. Cleaning up a team fight that Tempo Storm should have been able to win, but because they were so much concerned that boss, they bopped a Sanct, and No Tomorrow not once moved up to the boss, so that was a wasted Sanctification.
Yeah, they waited it out. Yes, Falstad went down, but being able to then clean up after the fact, using the terrain especially to box Fury in was huge, being able to take that kill too. So No Tomorrow ends up with a lead in that fight, but the boss was pushing in the bottom, and with getting the fort in mid as well as bottom because of the boss, we're very close in experience, but No Tomorrow has time to get their own boss so they can start to try to get their own pressure on the battleground.
Yeah, and just, I mean, now if we see No Tomorrow transition themselves into a curse, which obviously is a long ways away, the experience may not be even, but I just want to make it clear that No Tomorrow has a huge curse spike if they do, compared to what we just saw in Tempo, because again, Tempo has nobody who can sit there, right-click a fort and make it go down, whereas you have Vala Falstad, that is great potential there. Stitches is still one of the best at it, and they really can turn this game around into their favor. Strafe's going to be dropped as the force is here for Tempo Storm. They want to get damage onto Tiger JK, but they're unable to do so. Divine Storm comes down, Pulse Pop lands, and now Tiger JK, the Aegis is perfect. He stalls it out, but Equinox already is dead.
Yeah, No Tomorrow was so grouped for that. Both Sanctification and Divine Storm put down together very well by Tempo Storm to make sure that they could last through the strafe, and then follow-up damage from Dragon Blade. Tempo Storm firing back in the team fight, making sure that they maintain momentum. That is one thing that I noticed for Tempo Storm versus Gale Force Esports in their match on Friday is they were very quick to realize we just lost a fight, we have to win the next one so we don't start losing scattered deaths, and we make sure that we regain momentum. It felt like they were very focused on regaining momentum quickly whenever they did lose a fight to Gale Force.
Yeah, rather than playing, again, that kind of slower aspect, trying to find any kind of opportunity or window to make sure they can get that kind of tempo, not only for the morale of the squad, but merely for the rotational advantage that you can gain during that window. Gilly, I want to talk a bit about Judgment versus Sanctification. What are your thoughts in this game specifically over that choice coming out from Cattle there on the Tyrael?
Well, using Sanctification, if they're going to group on top of that, it made sense in the last fight, especially because you're seeing the Putrid File, but you're also seeing the Dragon Blade. If you can get through the Dragon Blade and in that amount of time drag somebody in to take them down with Divine Storm, like they did, it worked really well too, and able to get at least the first pick so that maybe, you know, everyone else can go away. But there's also the Mighty Gust too, so there's a lot of ways that you can stop the momentum of No Tomorrow in a team fight. What do you think of it?
I mean, I definitely see that thought process, right? Especially the Dragon Blade and Mighty Gust you brought up is essentially a soft counter to both of those, a bit of a skill matchup. But I do wonder if it's worth it in this. I can see the argument, as you brought up, but it's also like Tempo Storm, when you have Sanct, you want a consistent, sustaining DPS. And Tracer's a bit of that, but she's not until 16 mark, and they also want to win these fights very fast and effectively into things like the double backline that we see, the Falstad, having the Vala. And I just feel like I feel like Judgment could have been more impactful, but again, I can see with the Gust, with the Dragon Blade, why Cattle moved into that direction.
Even with Strafe too, if Strafe is the main battery for No Tomorrow to be able to get that, see Tiger JK is now going to get dragged in. Tiger is still alive, but Divine Storm hits immediately after. It's a trade on supports.
Trees over the wall though, he got the first reset. Beautiful follow-up on the Q there for Cattle. He dodged a secondary enabling there for the Genji, allowing him to get another E. No mana left, the dismount, and that is a pick for pick. Cawthon, no E's left. He goes down, Fury makes it out, but he's the only man left standing here for Tempo Storm, and a tribute over to No Tomorrow.
So I'd love to see No Tomorrow try to use this. Obviously, they only have 3 damage dealers. They have to kind of be careful, but use what they can, as much as they can, to start getting some things done with these longer respawn timers of Tempo Storm.
The last 2 fights we've seen Tempo Storm force, they've won the first 3 seconds, and they've lost every other moment past that. That is the exact circumstance that I'm talking about, the Sanct versus going into the Judgment. They were going to win fights immediately, and then you need to decide if you can win even harder from that point. with their composition, judgment, or sanctification. In these circumstances, even with the sanctification, which argues should help you in those longer fights, they're still not making it happen because they're using it so early to get the fight that they want, which again, could you have gotten that from the judgment? I don't think there's a right or wrong. I think it's about a 50-50 and it's a preference, but I just want to highlight that it changes how these have to be played, and I don't know if Tempo recognizes that yet. Wow.
She's going to recall in a really bad spot.
He just mad like the hell out of that.
Yes. Casanova?
The one true Stitches?
Hello?
He's been waiting.
Guys, I don't know if you guys need reminded, but Casanova just switched over to Warrior for this phase.
And he's already just busting out those hooks. Wow. Nice prediction there from him. Boss is now going to be started. Falstad and Dahaka both are over on the tribute. Nobody wants that. Falstad transitions down. Cattle has the holy ground. He shows. Now you don't kill it. Wow, they gusted. They're risking it.
Oh my goodness, they gusted, but Detainment Strike threw him out over there. They have to wait until he can get this. He jumps right back on top of it with the sanctification. Cattle just steals the boss.
Yeah, they risk everything there to try and get that boss. Can they get Cattle? Holy ground choke once more. Hook not going to land there from Casanova. Dahaka and the Giants are pressuring away up onto top, and the members of No Tomorrow now have to respond onto this boss. You see Tempo, they want to force this fight because they realize they have split pressure. This is a different Tempo. This is what I'm talking about, where they are trying to force every advantage, and this is such a nice move from them. Look at Fury.
Fury from the side. Now there is no sanctification. Dragonblade starts to go through. It was another amazing Detainment Strike, but Casanova is separated from the pack. He goes down. Boss stun. No Tomorrow gets everyone through.
Oh man, that holy ground was just this close from ice blocking, or I guess not ice blocking, blocking, body blocking, who knows. Either way.
Holy blocking.
Holy blocking Tiger JK away from that choke. But Tempo Storm, again, wins another skirmish there. Nice chase down there for them.
Cattle, the just goodness.
The goodness.
Herodric Reforging. Value.
So let's take a minute to talk. Oh, man.
What?
He must have taken damage from the stun, and the Rue was going to come out and actually kill him, forcing that to actually be used there. Aegis down. Tempo doesn't know this. That's one thing that we can talk about, is the fact that 45 seconds without an Aegis and Tempo has no idea. So the hard engage may be more hesitant than you would expect.
Right. Well, there's a lot of minion waves pushing their way toward the base of No Tomorrow. There's a boss that's going to help out the fact that No Tomorrow do have a curse against them, but Tempo Storm are not going to just let the fact that they worked so hard to get these 3 tributes go. They want to go in. Hook goes down, but it's Psalm.
The Giants, they're trying to enable Cattle's constantly throwing his Eldru in there into the choke, trying to get the holy ground value. Missed that one, so the cooldown's not going to be too short this time. Casanova looks like he's going to move up, files down.
Drops the moat in front. There goes the hook. Immediate sanked.
Casanova, though, he's got too much pressure. The Aegis is going to be there. June is under so much damage, but he gets the Divine Storm off. Uther down, but he's got heals. Can Treese clean this up? He looks like he can.
It looks like he can, definitely. Cawthon uses his Archon. Cattle is out of there.
Cattle's going to make it out, but not everybody else will. Cawthon, that is now another E used for him. He has no mana, so Cawthon dead, Fury dead too, and not even getting the keep. 4 members down for 40 seconds. The boss has now revealed the keep up in the northern lane. What is No Tomorrow going to do? It looks like their eyes are going to be set on ending this game through top.
Got their eyes on the prize. No Stitches, but the boss has pushed this all the way into almost taking out the keep. Caterpillar's here.
Okay, so how they do this is important. Jason can't wear this because this is free damage that's going to get him killed. See how he's He can't move on to core now by wearing that. They had to wait for trees. And now he is going to die into the backside, and that's their most consistent damage dealer. That is so risky here. Cattle can actually stall this out long enough. He can.
Shields are down.
It's, oh my gosh.
Trees holding onto the core.
Nice heal. The gust splitting. Uther's here.
Falling.
Tracer. No, he did it.
30%.
Trees is solo. Oh man, not enough time. No Tomorrow. Gets game number 1 here over Tempo Storm. What is happening? Every time with Tempo, they get the momentum into their favor, and it just breaks underneath them.
Having the boss during that second curse was a big deal, obviously. It ended up being a huge deal because No Tomorrow knew that Tempo Storm wanted to push. They did push, but the bile was down. Able to take out June. and the Genji factor. And
Yeah.
Talking Trees, you talked about it. We got to talk about it again. He showed up today.
Yeah, there's two teams right now that it feels like their Genji play is just too good to like let it go. The better teams are like, we'll give over the Genji the other side, but he's a momentum-based hero. I mean, whenever you get a pick, you get another spell back, the core of his kit, and it's no surprise when they find one, suddenly Talking Trees, like he's hacking, slashing all over the place. You saw like multiple times in that game, he's getting a pick off screen and then coming back because he's just finding the isolated target and forcing unfavorable trades.
Really well done for I Know Tomorrow to be able to take out that first game, especially since we've talked about it before. It is a battleground that Tempo Storm chose. So depending or hoping that you can rely on that momentum of getting a win on a battleground you choose is huge for a team.
Yeah, and I'm still honestly, even the very end there with talking about the ending with the keep and wearing the damage and the mana onto that side, like the fact that they identified the Falstad needed to be far enough back and drew aggro out of Cattle. Like, the very ending there for No Tomorrow, even though I would argue 100% there's no world Falstad should wear those shots, even when they did, they adjusted afterwards properly. And so that is still now No Tomorrow with that new shot calling with the new group, even taking games, making Tempo second-guess themselves. That's so... North America right now is so hard to judge. Outside of...
It always is.
Only Gale Force. That's the only one right now where I'm like, I think I know their power level, and it's the #1 team in North America. And every other one, like even Tempo, I'm like, are you 3? Are you 2? Are you 4? No Tomorrow's making an argument that they're going to rise to the ranks.
Well, let's get into game number 2. We're going to be on